Most organizations think a debrief is where you figure out what went wrong in a situation so that you can keep it from happening again, right? Guess what? They're wrong. That is a risk meeting that is wearing a debrief's clothes. And the people in the room, they know the difference. A real debrief does something that our litigious, cover your ass culture has almost trained out of us. It actually lets a whole team, from leadership on down, just be human about what happened, which is so freaking important right now because you know what? Somewhere there's a trauma therapist, a helper, a healer who is taking time off after something happened at their job. And instead of getting the recovery and integration that she needs, she's right now stuck in a loop, convinced she let her team down, that she's not strong enough for this, that somewhere underneath, she's not good enough, not cut out for this work after all. I'm going to talk to her today, and I want to talk to the person who leads her because both of you are carrying this. And before we get into it, let's get talking in the comments. If you've ever sat through a debrief that was helpful, let us know. Tell us in the comments and tell us what made the difference for you so that we can really build a picture together of what this can be like, because so few of us have gotten to experience that. And real quick, if you don't know me yet, hi, I'm Jenny Hughes. I'm a trauma psychologist and the founder of the Brave Trauma Therapist Collective, which is an online community membership where we make sure that trauma therapists actually have something left for them at the end of each day. I'm also the developer of the Brave Method, which is a training I've created over years and years of doing this work around vicarious trauma, secondary traumatic stress, and burnout that I get to bring into organizations so that clinicians and leadership can build resilience together, both before and after the hard things even happen. So back to our video here. A little while ago, I shared a video that I made about the 3 C's of team resilience. Those are co-regulation, connection, and communication, and they are foundational to healthy and functioning trauma-exposed teams. They are the foundation that holds teams up when things inevitably get tough, because that happens. And this, of course, includes trauma therapists and any mental and behavioral health professional. And it also includes people who work in the medical field, or they're lawyers, educators, or just anyone in a helping and healing profession. If you haven't watched that one yet, it pairs really well with this video right here, and I'm going to link it for you up top and in the description, because this video today is about what happens when the hard thing does happen, when there's a critical incident and everyone turns to look at each other and you find out whether that foundation was ever there or not. If you're lucky, you work in an organization that supports the debriefing process after things happen, after critical incidences. And as great as that is for you, we're going to start today by actually clearing up and talking about what a debrief is, because I think this is where most organizations go wrong before anyone even sits down. So, a debrief is not a root cause analysis. It is not the meeting where you map out what went wrong and who did what and how you'll keep it from ever happening again in the future. It is not a risk meeting. It's not about liability or documentation or protecting the organization. Those things have to happen for sure, especially from a business standpoint. We can't keep functioning as businesses that serve our communities unless we're really learning from things that happen and moving forward. So someone does need to look at that stuff and what needs to change. But that's a different meeting with a different purpose. And when you collapse the two into one, something breaks. Because the moment that the room senses that this is really figuring out who's to blame, people shut all the way down. I've watched it happen. I've been there. Early in my career, I stood in front of a team where you could feel the air change. The questions I asked just sat there in the quiet. And the only person who would speak up was the supervisor. Everyone else had wisely figured out that it wasn't safe to be honest. And a debrief where it's not safe to be honest isn't going to do anything at all. If you've ever felt that shift happen in a room, you already know exactly what I mean. Which brings me to the thing I most want you to take from this video. A debrief is only ever as good as the trust that's already in the room. I learned this doing work with providers at a level 1 trauma center. When I was new in that role, when I was the outsider they had never met, it did not matter that I was the hospital's trauma psychologist. It did not matter how good my questions are. I was an unknown person walking into a room full of medical providers, helpers who are wired to protect themselves, their work, and each other. And that protectiveness is necessary in so many settings, especially ones like that, where helpers and healers are working. It also meant that the silence was so thick you could cut it. With these teams, I had to take time to build with them so that they could grow to know me, so that we could go somewhere real. Over time, people did let themselves be seen, but the difference was never my technique. It was trust, and trust takes time. And this matters for you, whether you're the therapist or the one leading the team, because you cannot import trust in the middle of a crisis. You can't manufacture safety in the 90 minutes after something goes down, right? Whatever you've built before the incident is what you have to work with after it. That's what the 3 C's are all about. The connection that you tend to on the ordinary days is the exact thing that holds when an extraordinary day arrives. And this is not just based on my experience. It is what the research on debriefing professionals actually shows. I'm going to talk through it, and I'll put the citations in the description for those of you who want to read the studies yourselves. But let's go into some of these things that stand out. First, there's a term in the literature for what happens to providers after a critical incident occurs. They've been called the second victim. The idea is that when something goes wrong, the client or the patient is affected, and so is the clinician who was there. Right? We talk about this all the time on this channel. We normalize vicarious trauma because it's happening anyway. And we talk about what happens when it turns into things like compassion fatigue and secondary traumatic stress. Okay. With the term second victim, it's a pretty contested term, and for good reason. So some people argue that calling a provider a victim can blur accountability, or that it can feel painful to the people who were most directly harmed. And I think that critique is worth acknowledging, because naming that staff are affected can never become a way to avoid naming what actually happened to the survivor. Both things are true at the same time, right? The people doing this work are genuinely affected, and that truth does not erase anyone else's experience of that incident. Next thing from the research I want to talk about, and this actually really surprised me. For most of its history, the process of debriefing was not designed with the staff's well-being in mind. It was built to improve clinical outcomes, to learn to do better next time. But the emotional experience of the actual humans in the room was barely even studied at all. So we've spent decades debriefing the event and almost ignoring the people. This brings us to the third point from the research I want to talk about, which for me might be the most important one. The literature is clear that a single one-off debrief with no relationship, no follow-up, it doesn't just fail to help. It can actually leave staff worse off. The debrief was never meant to stand alone. So let's talk about what to actually do, because I don't ever want to leave you with just the problem. And the best thing that I can tell you is that a real response to a critical incident is not one person's job. It is a team moving towards each other. So let's really kind of show you what that looks like from both sides. If you are the therapist, the one who was there, who was dealing with the incident, who was really face to face with whatever happened, your first move is to call a thing, to let yourself name what happened out loud, right? To acknowledge that you had a normal reaction to an abnormal experience. And then hopefully, I hope this for you so deeply, to someone who can do something with it. You are allowed to be affected. Being affected is not failing. It's super important information, and it is human. Okay? Your brain and body did exactly what it needed to do in that moment, and it's still processing it. And if you need the words for how to bring this to your supervisor, borrow mine. You can say, hey, that thing that happened last week, it's really still kind of bothering me. It feels like it's stuck with me and I need to talk about it. Can we talk about it just you and me together and then maybe even as a team instead of just kind of continuing to keep going or brush it under the rug? Just kind of listen to that. See how it lands for you. Take those words exactly or also turn them into your own, okay? If you're the one that's leading that team, when someone brings those words to you, the most powerful thing you can do is meet them. Meet them, not manage them. You can say, yeah, that was awful. And of course, you're still feeling it because you're a human and you had a normal reaction to an abnormal experience. And then you, as the leader, can name it for the rest of your team. Because if one person is brave enough to tell you that it's still stuck in their body, then I promise the rest of them are feeling it too. But how do you do this as a leader? Keep it simple, okay? Say it plainly. Because you know what? Everyone already knows that it happened and they already know that no one is talking about it. But you, as the leader, naming it, saying, hey, this happened here, and we are going to talk about it, is probably a pretty new and super validating experience for your team. Then you get to set the frame. Tell your team what this conversation is and what it isn't, that it's not a review of who did what wrong. It's not about preventing the next lawsuit. Those meetings have their place, right? And this is not that. This is about us, the people who were there, right? You see how those two things, those moves kind of fit together? The therapist naming her experience and the leader naming what happened are the same act coming from two different directions. This really maps onto what Brené Brown means when she says that clear is kind. Yeah, avoidance feels way safer in the moment, but it eats away at trust. Honesty, offered with care, is what lets people keep doing the work that they love. And it goes both ways. It's not on the therapist alone to be brave, and it's not on the leader alone to hold everyone. It's a practice that you share, which leads to the one action I most want you to walk away with today. You cannot build any of this in 90 minutes after a crisis. The trust, the shared language, the permission to be human, those all get built in the ordinary weeks, long before you ever need them. So the real work, the thing that can start today, is to stop waiting for the next hard thing to begin building the conditions that make the next hard thing survivable. For some of you, that's the handful of colleagues that you have chosen as your people. For others, it's your whole team. And if you're sitting here thinking, my workplace needs this, but I have no idea how to build it, that is exactly the work of the BRAVE method that I talked at the beginning. Is how I help a team and its leadership build this foundation together so that when shit happens, and it does, because it always eventually happens, the trust is already in the room. So whether you're the leader who can bring something like this in, or the clinician who's going to send this video to the person who can, that's the move. You don't have to build it alone. None of us were meant to. That's why we do this helping work, because we know it's not about doing it alone. So as we wrap up today, I want to come back to where we started. A real debrief lets a whole team be human about what happened. And I know in a field that taught us to be endlessly strong, being human can feel like the thing you are least allowed to do. But being human was never the soft part. It wasn't the soft part of this work. It is exactly what keeps good people in it. So take a breath with me for a second. Whatever you've been carrying from work, you're allowed to set it down just for a moment right here. You're a human first and a trauma therapist, helper, healer second. If this did resonate with you, share with us in the comments what real support has looked like, because someone else watching needs to know that they're not the only one. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's next, and go watch the 3 C's video if you want the foundation underneath all of this. And if you're ready to build it for your team, the BRAVE method is waiting for you. I've linked to it in the description. So until next time, take good care of yourself so you can keep doing the work that you love.